Hey, Carl and Richard here with your 2024 NDC schedule.
We'll be at as many NDC conferences as possible this year, and you should consider attending no matter what. The Copenhagen Developers Festival happens August 26th through the 30th. Tickets at cphdevfest.com.
NDC Porto is happening October 14th through the 18th. The early bird discount ends June 14th. Tickets at ndcporto.com.
We'll see you there. We hope. Hey, guess what? It's .NET Rocks again for the 1907th time.
Something like that.
Did I say that right? 1907th time?
That's a lot of times.
It's a lot of times. A lot of great feedback on that show with Hanselman 7 shows ago.
Oh, yeah. We had so much fun. And I think that came across, right? We
totally.
were really enjoying ourselves.
Really good. Good stuff.
Yeah.
And I haven't talked to you in a while, my friend. What's new with you?
Finally home for the whole summer, which is about as long as I ever stay home. So the coast is beautiful and sunny because it's summertime. We cleaned up everything around the boathouse, got the kayaks out, doing all that good stuff.
Now, we had a Independence Day here. Just a couple of days
I went
ago.
and participated in it.
Yeah, but you also had Canada Day a little while ago.
Yep. So I did Canada Day was a little more chill. There's some spots to do fireworks.
It's more polite anyway.
Yeah. And we definitely do community fireworks versus individual fireworks. But then I went down to the Sonoma Valley, which is in the north of Everett in Washington State, which is quite a bit more rural.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think there's a bunch of tech folks that moved there. So, dude, it sounded like rolling thunder out of Vietnam. There was explosions all around the farm going on all of the time.
Now, when there were fireworks in Canada, did everybody apologize after every explosion? Is that the custom?
No, but we definitely let the professionals do the fireworks. We don't let individuals.
Sorry.
I was hanging out with the hunters, and they had 3-inch mortars.
Wow.
Like they're firing these gigantic, explosives into the air. It was crazy. Really a lot of fun. We had a great time.
All right. Well, I can't really say much has happened in my life except a couple of good band gigs and just enjoying the.
Yeah. Apparently, our band's tearing it up. Like you don't fit in a bar anymore. You need to do festivals. We're
gonna have to do festivals and theaters pretty soon.
That's awesome.
But anyway, that's all I got. I'm gonna roll the crazy music for Better Know a Framework.
Awesome.
Hit it.
All right, man, what do you got?
So this one came from our friend Simon Kropp, who participates in the AppVNext Slack room, and this is amazing. Grep.
What is it?
.app.
Okay.
Search across 500,000 Git repos.
Wow.
It's like Google for Git.
Nice.
And then there's a couple of checkboxes here, case sensitive, and the one I like the best, regular expression. That's right. You can search 500,000 Git repos with a regular
I look
expression.
for Git repos to understand regex in the first place. Now you're asking me to use regex to find that? Like that is not a thing.
And then there's whole words. So the first thing, of course, that I check is, connection string, right? To see who's put their connection strings in their Git repos. And I got to say, I didn't really find any.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but my biggest problem with this is you're searching such a large number. Like try and get a filter, an expression down to just like 5.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Some summer reading for you. Go for it.
There's a lot.
And go.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's what I got. Thank you, Simon. Grep.app code search is
cool.
A serious time vampire.
Yeah, no. And I think the logical thing you stick in there is like a line of code you're working on or a particular API you're trying to call and find examples of it. For sure.
Right. And that's if you don't want to use GitHub Copilot or ChatGPT or whatever.
Stack Overflow.
Stack Overflow.
Look, another option. There you go.
So that's what I got. Who's talking to us today, Richard?
Grabbed a comment off of show 1903, the one we did with our friend Beth Massey when we talked about Maui and Blazor. I think that was a build. Wasn't that a build too?
Yep.
It was a build. And Rod had this comment. I think this is Ron Falanga. I'm not quite sure, but Rod had this comment. He said, I love this episode. It was great to hear Beth's comments on the various UI technologies that Microsoft supports. I understand that she prefers Blazor, but appreciate her points that under circumstances, either WPF, WinUI 3, or Maui would be a better choice. It's it depends situation.
Certainly.
Or put differently, use the right tool for the job rather than force one tool to address all scenarios. Or, is there any one right tool for any job? Like, there's more than one way to solve most problems.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes on to say, I spent about 5 years writing WPF apps in my current job. I like the power that WPF gives you. And of course, WPF got a little bounce at build, right? Because they said they were going to do a bunch of stuff with it, include Win 8, Win 11 stuff, all kinds of things. However, under the wrong circumstances, WPF may result in a terrible UX experience. That's nice. We wrote 8 WPF applications, none of which are in use today for various reasons. But one common reason was that the users hated the UX. I don't blame them. It was terrible, very complicated, requiring the users to memorize the database schema rather than using an app that followed their workflow. Now I'm putting WPF behind me. I'm focused upon Blazor as I see how popular it is, as well as simpler in its approach to doing things like data binding.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can blame WPF for that situation, Rod.
No, I don't think he's blaming it either.
Yeah.
He's just saying, when you have all those options available to you, you can create some really bad stuff.
Well, I also think somebody in the leadership there decided that WPF was going to be a way, but then maybe didn't outline a set of UX plans for how we're going to do a good job with that.
Right.
It's an interesting problem, and tools aren't going to save you. You definitely need a plan. We certainly heard that over and over again.
I had a friend who replaced the boards on my back deck, and Dio.
Yeah.
My friend Dio. Yeah. So he replaced the boards, and one of them is completely warped.
Right.
And he hammered it on nicely with the tools that he had. The nails were great. The hammer was great. He just took that warped board and nailed it on, and it sticks up and it's ugly. And, you can do the same thing with really good tools.
Yeah. Well,
you know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say here?
Every piece of software has some ugliness. You know where yours is?
That's
Apparently,
right.
That's your warped board. Like the trick is to not put the warped board in front of the door.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Bury it away in a place where it's not going to hurt anybody.
It sounds like it came from personal experience.
Why would I know?
I don't know.
I'm just guessing. So, Rod, thank you so much for your comment. And a copy of Music to Code By is on its way to you. And if you'd like a copy of Music to Code By, write a comment on the website at .netrocks.com or on the Facebooks. We publish every show there. And if you comment there and I read it on the show, we'll send you a copy of Music to Code By.
And you can follow us on Twitter if you want. We've been there for a long, long time. But we are also with the cool kids on Mastodon. I'm at Carl Franklin at techhub.social.
And I'm Rich Campbell at mastodon.social.
And send us a toot. And that's another way that you can get your comment on our show and get some good stuff.
For sure.
Okay, let's bring on our guest, Hilary Stohs-Krause. She's a childhood coder turned public radio journalist turned software engineer. She's passionate about the intersection of tech, entrepreneurship, and social justice, and serves on boards for a tech and entrepreneurship festival, a tech inclusivity conference, and a social good startup accelerator. Currently a senior software engineer at Red Canary, she's a regular podcast guest and conference speaker both nationally and internationally. And she became obsessed with plants during the pandemic and will read any fantasy or sci-fi she can get her hands on.
Nice.
What a great bio. I'm interested in the public radio journalism thing.
Yeah.
What was that all about?
Yeah, well, I started writing code when I was like 12. I have an identical twin sister, and we made a website dedicated to our favorite TV show at the time, which was Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Awesome.
This was like pre-CSS, right? We had a guest book, we had a counter, we had like all of the early features.
The ring links.
Yeah, we were in a couple web
Buffy
rings.
the Vampire sites, yeah.
Totally.
The internet was so much nicer back then, truly.
Did it look like hamsterdance.com? Ever?
I'd like to think it was slightly, but we had fewer repeating GIFs. But
there you go.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, she knows what that is. That's really that was my real test. You know.
But this would have been like mid 90s, and literally no one told me that I could do that for a job. So I didn't. So I went into journalism instead, and then just, long story short, kind of every job I had in journalism, it was moving more and more towards the web and the internet. And I started doing a lot more of that with my work. And I just kind of got to the point where I was like, okay, I love the work I'm doing, but there are no jobs and, and there's no money. So maybe it's time to just do this other part full time.
And was the public radio thing a local public radio, or was it NPR, or what was it?
Yeah, it was an NPR affiliate. And then I did a couple things nationally.
That's great. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
But it also means you come from a communications background too, right? Like you're used to putting your thoughts in an organized form. Like when you think about building good web design and making decent pages, it's about making a plan.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to talk about this idea of narrative coding. So like writing code
that.
like
That's
you're telling
really
a story.
Yeah. That's a really great approach. I love it. That's a good idea. And just, I mean, you're trying to persuade your customer to think the right way so you can lead them to where they actually want to go. Yeah, I love it. That's good. That's a great approach. I have never done that. Should have thought of it. Needed a journalist. All makes sense now. And what's Red Canary?
Yeah, so Red Canary is a cybersecurity company based in the US, headquartered in Denver. And we work with a whole wide variety of customers on sort of basically pulling in data from a wide variety of sources, like local servers, cloud, like kind of the whole shebang, and then running it through our engine, which is built on more than a decade of experience, kind of looking for anomalies and then taking action on those anomalies to protect customers from potential threats.
Nice. So a service you sign up to, and you're doing some monitoring on their behalf, and then helping to deal with response. It sounds like a run-ass topic, but it's a good one.
So if my friend who put those boards on my deck was a brand new developer and had his nice shiny nails and hammer, what would you tell him about how to start thinking about good user experience?
Are we going with the like wood metaphor, or are we
Oh, we don't.
going
No. Let's go. Let's jump back to coding.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
Chuck that
I
wood
think
board out.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's like, get a different board, my friend.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going too. It's like, Dio, why put the bent board on? Go get a new board.
Yeah, in a nutshell, I think the biggest thing with UX UI is just consistency. So even if you end up picking a pattern that's maybe subpar or a little confusing, as long as you follow that pattern, right, people will learn it, and then it stops being confusing. So I think really what has the biggest impact is just being predictable with your design.
The problem is you're learning as you go. And so you change techniques as you learn things, and it gets represented all through the site. Well, that was the point where I learned this. So then I changed, and I didn't go back and retrofit everything I built before that.
So that's where patterns and like style guides really come in handy, right? So if instead of styling, for example, individual buttons, if you just have like a button class or a module that you just insert every time you need it, then when you want to change that button, you just change it in one place and it filters everywhere.
And all the buttons changes. So this is where we're talking about good. You don't have to know a lot about design, but here's a good practice, because then a design person could come in and restyle that for you.
And they will.
They will.
They will.
Yeah, I think a lot with like UX and design is we think of it as being very divorced from the code part of it. But as someone who has been a full stack software engineer and has done design as well, like web design, they really are two sides of the same coin. And I think a lot of the same principles can apply, right? So if we're thinking about design, like dry, right? Don't repeat yourself. Like don't repeat your design code.
Right.
Don't repeat your regular code. And it just makes it all flexible for the same reasons.
Does that mean that Yagni also applies? Like don't add styles that you're not using. Like you're not going to need them.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. Just thinking through. Yeah, if I'm thinking like a developer, it's like, don't build stuff you don't need. If you do something twice, make it repeatable.
Start out simple. You can, like what's the core thing you're trying to accomplish here, and then you can make it fancy later.
I mean,
what about Mibney?
Mibney, what's that one?
Nibme, what is it? Not in my backyard.
Oh, NIMBY?
NIMBY?
Yeah, but you could say not in my something YAML. That's what I would.
Don't say YAML.
Not in my base YAML.
Not in my base YAML. That's it.
That's so funny.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and these are just like, because often we're committed to building a site before we've got really a design in place. But when I've been confronted with this, a lot of times I just like, let's get a CMS. Like just use a third. I don't know how you feel about this, but it's like, why are we reinventing this? You want to put a bunch of pages up, and like there are tools for this already. We don't need to start from scratch.
Yeah, totally. I think it really depends on the project and the audience and the intention. So, for example, I love Squarespace. I know there's a ton of them out there. Everybody's got their favorite. For me, Squarespace is mine. And you know, like I help run the Madison edition of DevFest, like the global GDG festival, right? And we use Squarespace. And somebody was like, "Well, you're a dev conference, shouldn't you like handcraft your site?" And I'm like, "Why?"
Yeah,
like,
no, we're a dev
so
conference.
Many better things to do with our time. Yeah.
Why write code you don't need to write? Well, and even if you don't deploy it, it's a great way to get people to prototype. It's just get close to what they want, and then at least you can grab onto it and say, let's go take this in a different direction.
Oh yeah. I used to work in consulting mostly with startups, and we always told them, like, there were people that we turned down as clients because I was like, look, you can get by for at least a year, like seeing if this is even a valid business idea using a mix of like Gmail and spreadsheets and like online forms. Like you don't actually need custom software yet. Figure out first if this is even going to make you any money, and then come back and we'll talk.
Then you have these companies that already have existing web apps built in other things, and then they're moving to maybe new technologies, and they want to start completely over with style. That isn't something that a Squarespace or something like that is going to work. They already have an application framework on the back end. Now they need a developer and or a CSS stylist to come in and take over.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think all like so many things in tech, right? There's a time and a place for each tool where it's a great fit. And there's times where you're either going to outgrow it or it's going to be too limiting, and so CMSs are one example. Another is using like design libraries, like Tailwind, right? Or Bootstrap. For a lot of people, that's going to be great. Like we use Bootstrap at Red Canary, but for a lot of other people, it's either going to be overhead that's not necessary because you're recustomizing everything anyway, or it's just not going to get you, where you need to be design wise. So especially if you're, like building a website where you're trying to sell your design expertise. Yeah, Bootstrap's probably not going to do that effectively, right?
Sure.
But if I'm a developer who hasn't got a lot of design experiences, like, isn't Bootstrap a good choice just because it's going to give it an aesthetic by default, and then an expert can come in and retrofit fairly easily? Is that true, or does it make the situation worse?
I think it again depends. Like if you're expecting that, like if you're only using Bootstrap for sort of the prototype and it's happening sort of consecutively, so it's like, okay, we come in, we build the first page, we use Bootstrap. We know someone's going to come in, tear all the Bootstrap out and put it, then I don't think it's a great use.
Right.
I think in that case, I would rather just build my own lightweight library with some core classes and use that. Because then you also don't have to worry about keeping it updated, right? Like it's just, if you're really using it just to create like placeholder content, then I would just spin it my own minimalist one and use that.
Just a little less placeholder effectively. So Bootstrap's not a good placeholder. I
think Bootstrap there's a lot of things that are great about it. And I do have I go back and forth on, I'm someone who actually really likes to write her own CSS. And sometimes I get annoyed with the way that there are constraints when you use a library like that. And sometimes I want to just I know exactly what I want. I just want it to work. I don't want to have to look up the, 7 different classes I have to put together to get it to do this one thing.
If I did this myself, I wouldn't have this problem.
Nice.
Right. Yeah. And, for people who are less experienced with CSS or just, there are higher priorities for them to spend their time on. Yeah, Bootstrap can be a great way. Bootstrap, Tailwind, all of those can save a lot of developer time once you get into it. But, one thing I'll see, we have a lot of back-end folks at Red Canary, and I'll see folks who just do like inline style calls because they don't know what the Bootstrap class is, and they just need 5 pixels of margin on the left, and
and this is the thing that'll make the designer crazy, right? Like that's hunting nose down.
The designer we work with also is an engineer, and so she's great about like when she writes code, she'll fix those things for us. But so it's all trade-offs. But I think there are limits to all of those, and there are times where you do need to just kind of like handcraft what it's going to look like.
Doesn't GitHub Copilot make it easier? Because clearly I'm writing better CSS because I asked ChatGPT.
Again, trade-offs.
I say that as sarcastically as possible.
Man, that's how Canadians make jokes.
Deep in my heart, I know
straight
I'm funny.
face. Yeah. you did mention that consistency was the number one thing, and creating style guides. Are there any basic style guides that you recommend to people who are starting out? I think of things that Mark Miller talked about in his amazing video, The Science of Great UI, where he talked about contrast and the things that you can do to draw your eye to things, and then using a lighter contrast for things that aren't as important at this particular moment. Are there style guides that are out there that you would send to people?
That's a great question, and I'm sure there are. I haven't really approached it from that direction. I think it's there. Contrast is a big one, and that's something that I, when I talk about this topic, that's a big thing that I pull up is like, make sure you have high enough contrast, the right kind of contrast in the right places, to your point. It's really, I think people oftentimes think of design as strictly a creative
sort of
technique.
aesthetic thing.
Yeah. Or like you have to have a good imagination. You have to be creative. You have to be good at art, that kind of thing. And I think I know there's a lot of logic to it. And I think that's really where UX is kind of pulled in and say, hey, actually, there's statistics and logic and psychology behind all of this. It's not just choosing colors. And so I think really once you have even a brief understanding of that, like it just makes everything a lot easier.
Well, and certainly we've done the shows, done a bunch of shows now with folks focused on accessibility that talk about the fact that the modern web is way better at giving you structures to be able to help folks that have accessibility challenges interact with your page. You just have to know about them.
Yeah. And really at this point, I don't think there's an excuse not to.
Right.
There's so many good resources out there. There are, browser plugins to tell you exactly what's wrong and how to fix it.
Right.
And it's one of those things where when you are accounting for accessibility needs, you end up with better design. It's just, they go hand in hand.
Right. It's just a natural byproduct. Like to heck with the aesthetic, pursue accessibility and you will get a bunch of aesthetic from it.
Yeah.
I think that's very practical, and especially for someone who's not into that design element to say, no, we'll just pursue this. And a bunch of that other stuff's going to fall out from it.
Yeah. And that brings me back to what we were talking about before, which is that the intention of the website should be obvious and clear when you're on a particular page. And it shouldn't have to be explained. You shouldn't have to read a paragraph of text. If it's not clear and obvious, then you have a real problem. And you can measure these things, obviously. And we've talked about how to measure them with, what do they call it? Hotspots, and tracking where the mouse goes.
Eye tracking and all that.
Which is sort of where the eye goes. Yeah. And you can tell that people do that. They move the mouse with their eyes over a page when they're looking for things. And I find this when I'm sharing a screen with a customer and they're looking at the code and stuff and they're trying to find something in a list and they're going up and the mouse is going up and it's going down and it's going up. It's like, no, it's right there. Up, one, over, there. Nope, too far. Right.
Yeah, I had that happen the other day. A coworker was sharing their screen and trying to find a specific ticket. And like, their mouse was actually hovering over it, but after looking for a while, they didn't realize that, and they went to do it like Command F to search for it. And I was like, just click. You're on
right
it.
there.
You're there. That's so
But
funny.
you know, those kinds of situations also illustrate a poor design in a way, because it shouldn't take that long to find what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
if
that's
you
one of the
have,
key
if
things.
you're presented with a huge list of options, you know, then it takes all that mental and physical time to find it.
I mean, that fits right into this idea of progressive disclosure, right? Which is you disclose information progressively. You're not doing it all at the same time.
I love that.
You're not overwhelming the person with content, but you're making it easy for them to find what they're looking for.
Right. I love that. It's kind of like, you know, a search box, right? So you go in to have a meeting with somebody and the first question is, why are you here? You know, you start out with something very general and you get to exactly what you want.
Yeah. I had an Alpha UX experience actually this morning. I was trying to get the account number for a bank account for I help run a women in tech group here in town. Mm-hmm. We just got a bank account. We're like getting real and fancy and official. And I was trying to hook it up to our PayPal account and it kept rejecting it. So I called the bank and and she was like, okay, go to your page, click on the account, click on about account, which is where I had been. Mm-hmm. And she's like, do you see the one that's called account number? And I said, yeah. She's like, it's not that one.
That's just not
bank
progressive
websites.
Disclosure.
Bank websites are the worst.
You could tell she'd done this before because she was like, I know it's confusing. You actually want the one underneath. And I was like, why?
The bank website that we use to make ACH payments to our vendors, the process is so screwed up. You go basically to this page, and before you can do anything, you have to scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, right? And then hit new whatever. It's at the bottom of the page, which is just one big list. Dumb. And then after you put something in, you have to go to the top of the page and you have to sort twice to get it to show up at the top. Just little things like that drive me nuts. And my wife too, who uses it all the time. Mm-hmm. It's just unbelievable. Banks just like, I don't know if it's just my bank, but.
I think a big thing with design, like I think a lot about, because I have limited training. Mm-hmm. So if you need me to make like a one-off event website for some cool new art exhibit, like you're the wrong person for that. But I think a lot of it really for the majority of what we're building, right? We don't need that kind of like high intensity design. We just need something that's functional. And a big part is preventing frustration.
Right.
Like you don't really need to impress someone. Like I don't really need someone to come and be like, wow, this is such a great design. Like I'm going to screenshot this and send it to no, but I want them to like not complain about it.
Right.
Yeah. Once they get frustrated, they get into that negative spiral and they're actually less and less capable. Mm-hmm. Right. Like they're really going to have a tough time. I've watched someone just unravel on that. I also jump back to, we do have a tendency as developers to just say, let's make sure all the options are available. I will build the dialogue of doom.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Like, it's just like the internet. Everything's there. You just can't find it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not.
Let them figure it out.
Yeah, it is not progressive design, that's for sure, or progressive disclosure. It's like, no, bleh, here you go, everything.
You just said something that hit a nerve, and Richard and I both talked about this in different contexts, but, it's kind of like the sound guy at a concert. You don't go up to the sound guy after the concert and say, whoa, that was so amazing. However, if there's a blast of feedback, oh, that frickin' sound guy, oh my God, what an idiot, right?
Yeah, and like if you do your job well, no one notices.
That's right. Yeah, and good audio is like that. And Richard jokes a lot. Like IT people never get the recognition that developers get unless something really goes wrong. And then those stupid IT guys.
Yeah. you can only get a C or you can get an F. There's nothing else. That's it. And if you get a C, nobody can tell. So, I mean, that's the joke about actually designing a web page well. If nobody notices, you nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, either that or they're too afraid to tell anybody or don't even know how to articulate what the problem is.
Right.
So you really got to test it and watch people use it, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I gave this talk at NDC Oslo, I had someone come up afterwards who I could tell was prepared to pick a fight. Just from his countenance and the way, the phrasing. And he was kind of like, yeah, so I kind of think that we should actually have experts doing this and not developers. And I was like, I agree completely.
Yes.
I agree completely. There's expertise to be had here. Like we should have people trained to doing this. However, that is often not the case. And so ignoring the problem is not going to make it better. So let's at least try to equip people to do as good a job as they can when they have to do it. But
yeah, that's sort of the reality. We'd love to have more designers. We just don't. So now what? Do we not make anything? That's not good either. And folks, we got to interrupt for one moment for this very important message.
Or two.
And we're back. It's .NET Rocks. I'm Richard Campbell. That's Carl Franklin.
Hey.
Talking to our friend Hilary. And we were supposed to do this show in person in Oslo, but things but now we get to talk about your talk because it was a while ago as well, right? And we move further on. I think we sort of painted a picture at the beginning there of just some simple things that a developer can do because there isn't a designer available yet. Maybe that person's going to get to your site eventually. Maybe at some point when it gets to a certain level of success, we're going to spend more resources on. Like I can think of all these reasons. Are there other things to steer clear of as a developer as you're building a page to just not make that harder on the design resource when it appears? Yeah,
I think really like keeping it simple is another big one. So not simple just in terms of code in the CSS or styling that you're adding, but it's also much easier to follow. If you think about like a page that has, 4 columns, because we're like, oh, it's 4 different sections, and then maybe below that is more columns, and it's like, okay, well, not necessarily sure where to start. I'm not sure where to look first. Versus if you had a longer wall of text, but it was broken up by subheaders, that's actually a lot easier to consume generally. Right. And of course, I'm speaking in generalizations here because there's always exceptions and it depends on the specific content that you're trying to place. But, I always tell people like, don't underthink it and don't overthink it.
They're great.
So think about it some, right? Don't just slap stuff on the page and call it good, but
just be awesome. Okay. Can you just do that?
I mean, keep it simple and keep it consistent. And really those are like, and don't take up the entire width of the computer screen. I had a former coworker who used to do that. Actually prompted me to start giving this talk because I was like, that's wrong. And he's like, why? And I'm like, I don't know, but I will find out. Yeah. You got to work. Well, I mean, now you've kicked off a bunch of things like media queries. Like, how do I make this tolerant to a phone versus a tablet versus just a smaller screen? Like, well, and when you keep it simple and stick to patterns, all of that becomes easier too. Right. Right. Yeah. And this is also an initial design decision too, right? Like most of the time a web page is not going to be viewed on the same computer that you wrote it on. Like your friend who's using the whole screen with, it's like, listen, you're not the primary user of this web page. Yeah. Why are you building it to your machine? Yeah. I think the difference there is like, if it fits on a smaller screen, you can also read it on a larger screen. Right. Right. Like it might not be attuned or like the most, you might wish that there were changes, but you can still interact with it. It's not giving you problems. Right. Whereas if you build for a bigger screen and it doesn't work on a smaller screen, you've just lost a bunch of customers. Hey, we got to get back to like this project you're working on. Who's it for? Really? Like and what kind of gear do you think they have? Like what do you expect it to be viewed on? Well, and I think we make assumptions too, because like most people don't have 3 monitors. What? Right? I have problems. I have problems with my 49-inch monitor because if I'm on a Zoom call or whatever and I want to share my screen, oh my God, it's painful. The answer is have another monitor, right? Have a 1080. That's what I've done now. I've got a separate 1080p monitor just for easy sharing. Yep. Which doesn't make us closer to the customer. It makes us further away. Sometimes just looking at, to your point, like, what is the gear that our users are using.
Mm-hmm.
We looked at the data at my old company, we looked at the data for a client. We were having an argument about which browsers we were going to officially support.
Right.
And just had them pull from their analytics data. And it turned out that like 96% of their people were all using Chrome.
Conversation over.
And then the rest...
Is that mobile?
And the rest were on Safari. So I'm like, great. There you go. Like,
was it mobile Chrome or
using desktop.
Okay.
Desktop Chrome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so great to, I mean, this is why go get data. Like, because conversations end real fast when it's that kind of numbers. You got 90% of anything, just stop. Like, it's over. Now, part of that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If it does not render on Safari, your Safari use will be low.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I ran into this with a project years ago where we one machine, there was one class of machine in the organization that had very low utilization on it. And so they're like, well, those people just don't need it. It's like, no, it actually doesn't run on that machine. So they just, when they need to do that thing, they go to a different computer. So this was actually a really important bug to fix, but it didn't show up high in the stats because it didn't happen very often because everybody already learned to work around it.
Mm-hmm. Well, or like if there's a long running bug and you look at the data and you're like, oh, well, no one visits that page anyway, so we'll just keep not fixing it. Same thing, right? It's like, well, no one visits that page because
you could just call
bug.
it a security feature and call
there
it.
You go. Right? As long as nobody uses this site, it works like a hot damn.
It's a threat vector removal.
There you go. Ever since I turned off the server, no breaches.
No breaches. 100% track record.
Yeah, no, we're knocking it. We're all good. We got to get back on track a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
What is a designer going to ask me when I have to take over the site? They're now going to start making modifications. Like, is my code supposed to speak for itself? Is there anything I should have known or kept notes on?
They're going to say, how long have you been smoking crack?
Yeah. What were you thinking?
I would, if we're assuming that it's a designer who also has at least some coding skills, I think there are maybe a different way to answer that question is instead like, what can you do to prevent the designer from having to ask you questions?
Right. The point is not to not have them contact you.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of this comes down to, again, it's very similar to how we write regular code, right? Like, does our view code have semantic HTML? Are we naming our variables things that the designer with limited context can understand? Like, okay, so this section is clearly what it corresponds to this on the browser because I can see that the variable names, if I have divs that are named, like it's easy for me to follow and read and comprehend and then feel like I can move around safely without breaking something.
Nice. Less foo, you say.
Yeah. Less foo, less bar, less baz.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just grabbed a link off of the W3 schools on semantic elements, and it was a .asp page, and I'm just like,
that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
W3 schools, the content is great though.
Yeah, but apparently they're running an engine from 1998.
Yep,
that's pretty awesome. I hope
it's
secure.
It still works.
It does work. In the end, it's just learning materials, and that's always about that.
Yep.
But,
right. Yeah,
wow.
You wonder how much dynamic content they really need to spit out. Although they do have that try it yourself thing, right? Where you can like write some JavaScript on one side of the screen and run it, and it runs on the other side. That's pretty cool. I got to think that's a security risk though.
Hopefully it jumps to something else when it does that. Nope, it's still ASP. Wow. Okay. I'm excited. Really. It's just
wow.
It's really something. So all of those original semantic tags, the H1s, H2s, is that all that stuff still relevant?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, totally. I mean, so one of the talks that I've been giving recently is about creating accessible coding environments for programmers who have disabilities or need accommodations. And I talk about semantic HTML in that talk. So it's not only valuable for screen readers, for generating tables of contents, for kind of giving you some of that built-in like skimmability. So especially if we're talking about people without a lot of design background, like you don't have to decide what the font sizes. You can just use semantic HTML and it'll give a lot of that to you for free from what's baked into the browser. And also a lot of it has a direct impact on the user experience. So think about when you go to fill out a form and it has a, name field, phone number field, address field, and your like auto fill doesn't work.
Right.
That's because they didn't do the
Use
HTML
the semantic
correctly.
tags. Yeah.
Like it's very simple and there are universal standards for phone number, for last name, for first, all of these. And that's what your browser is looking for and it tries to autofill. And I get so mad now when I try to fill out a form and I have to fill out every single field by hand.
Yeah. Like
because I know that it's like, right, that it's such a simple fix that makes everyone's life better. And it's just, it's either not being aware of it or not taking the time.
Well,
and it's so simple.
And aren't there online tools that'll just test your page for you too?
Oh yeah. Well, and I think might actually be W3 schools.
Yeah, W3 schools.
There's W3 schools. There is a W3C. Like there's the easy checks at W3C, which is you just feed it a page. One
of them has like this list of like all 30 attributes that you can use for inputs to make, and it's not hard. And so it's not only an accessibility issue, it's also a lot of it can be a UX issue. And again, it's a time saver because if you are consistent with using semantic HTML, then whatever library you're using, however you're doing it, it makes it a lot easier to be consistent with that too.
Right. Well, we're back at the accessibility conversation. Like going down that path will also guide you towards the semantic tags and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So can I ask you a question about your talk? Because I looked at your slides and it's like the third slide in. This is a real website from 1996. I really want you to share that picture with the world because that is a screenshot of Netscape, Senator Ted Kennedy's website, the office of Senator Kennedy, and just so many
horrors.
Terrible things. The most terrible thing is that the font size and boldness don't seem to matter. Like everything on the page is vying for your attention all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And
got a counter.
The counter is funny too, but I just mean like, there's a links and the links are all just as important as each other. Like everything is jumping out at you. Look at me. No, look at me. No, look at me. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Just so bad.
It is and it isn't. And so I think this is where it really gets interesting because while I would argue it's overall very outdated design and we know a lot better now, there's also no surprises, right?
Yeah,
like
I suppose
it
you're
might
right.
take me a second to find what I'm looking for, but it's all pretty straightforward, right? There's no carousels. There's no, like information that only appears on hover, right? Everything is very discoverable on this site. And so it's an interesting mix of like cringe and like, it's not that bad.
Yeah, you're right. I have seen worse. And the original VB was kind of like it was great in many ways for forms applications, but it also let developers do just about anything design wise. And there are some Billie Hollis shows some screens from old 90s Visual Basic applications that were actually real that will give you a headache. Just a headache.
Just horrible.
Every inch of the screen is filled with some graphic or some text or something.
Because white space is a waste.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Do you remember frames when there'd be like a bottom frame and a side frame and all their own scrolls? And yeah.
Do we have a conversation about navigation between pages and things? Like, what's the right way these days to build navigation within page sets?
I would say big things to think about with navigation are, I think, again, really being judicious about what you make accessible in like like if you have a drop down navigation series, like I've gone to websites that have like 50 items in there, and that's just useless. And think about trying to use it on a phone. It's so really being judicious with that progressive disclosure again, right? Of, okay, like what are our high level ones? How do we put it? And I also really like sort of, I don't know what you would call it, but like double dipping.
Right.
So not just, if there's a page that people are going to want to go to, and but it's not really to the level of like front and center on the homepage, link to it from wherever it's appropriate to link to it, right? Make it easy for people to find what they're looking for. And I think sometimes you run into like, oh, well, you get here by going through these 3 pages, and it's like, okay, but I'm on this page that references that. Like, why wouldn't you also give me access to that from here?
Why am I 3 pages away?
Right.
And you mentioned double dipping. That means like putting a link to something important at the top and then some text and the same link at the bottom, right? Well, which one should I click?
I think just, making it not as much putting them both on the same page, but being able to access information from multiple places within a site. So not treating it like,
I see.
It's not like you're reading a book where you don't want to repeat chapters. It's more like you're reading a table of, or I don't know. This analogy is failing me. Yeah.
No, I get it. You want to have one place where you link to a page, not millions of places. And that should be the main navigation means, whether it's a toolbar or a sidebar or a drop-down menu or whatever.
Yeah, just making it easy to find what you're looking for, and being very explicit with what clicking anything is going to do.
Right.
So, there's nothing more frustrating than being like, oh, this must be the page I want. And then you go there and it's not.
And there's no way back. Start over.
Right. Yes.
You're pushing a hot button for me, man. I have this experience daily. Find what you want. It's the little game we play.
Mm-hmm.
How do we feel about the hamburger menu? Because is that really still a thing? Like, is that just...
This is a required question when you come on .NET Rocks about design. We're going to ask you about the hamburger menu.
Yeah.
I personally don't have issues with the hamburger menu, but I do have issues with icon usage generally.
Right. But because it's so specific, right? Like, does the hamburger menu transcend that? Does everybody know what a hamburger menu icon is? So I would argue that every icon should have a label, even ones that we consider universal, because universal is still within the context of a culture or a language or, income bracket even. Yep.
And so my personal preference is the hamburger icon with the word menu. And so then you're just really reinforcing what's going on.
When we first started talking to people about design and the hamburger menu is starting to become popular, most of the people that we interviewed were like, oh, no, the hamburger menu is terrible. Don't use that. And then, of course, it got so popular. And I think Richard used the word transcend, right? Yeah. It kind of transcends the rule of iconography or whatever the rules are. And it's now so ubiquitous and everybody knows what it means. But within the popular culture and the people who are using computers today, they might not tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think about how we still there are still places that have a floppy disk icon for save.
I was thinking a skeuomorphic kind
or
of
even
thing.
an envelope for email, because email has nothing to do with envelopes.
What is an envelope?
I was just looking at a page where they had the downward caret, which implies a menu pops from here. But then when you hover over it, it actually flips to the upward caret and things change.
What?
And so it's like,
yes.
I don't know what this does. And now I feel less like I know what it does. Like I'm just confused.
I did something. I don't know what I did.
All you've made me do is feel like I should move my mouse away from you.
This is my issue with toggles. It's the same thing. Unless they have labels on the two sides of the little like slider toggle, I never know if it's turned off or on, especially if it's not like... And I have full color vision, and don't have any vision issues. So like sometimes it'll be, to me, obviously disabled if it's like grayed out. Not everyone can see that, first of all.
Yeah.
But secondly, like sometimes it's like, okay, when it's on, it's green. When it's off, it's purple. And it's like, what? And then you end up having to turn it off and on several times to try and discern like which is the on state and which is the off state. And so this is where like, you know, again, like labels on everything. Yep. Just make it like overly obvious what is happening.
Right.
Yeah.
If you don't have a label that represents the current state of it, you know, you might think that when it says off, that it's off, or do you press it to make it off? Like it's not clear. Yeah.
Or when things automatically save, but don't tell you it's automatically saving.
Right.
And there's no save button. And so you open it in like a new tab just to make sure it actually is persisting. Yeah.
Or if you hit a save button and there's no feedback whatsoever. What? Yeah. Nothing.
I don't know.
Did it save?
Yeah.
Did it not? I don't know. Thanks for telling me. We should do regular bitch sessions about UI because I have a million complaints. We should probably do we could do videos of websites that suck and why.
My favorite pet peeve, I have a hyphenated last name and I have like 30 screenshots in a folder on my desktop of forums that will not accept a hyphen in a last name.
You're not allowed to have a hyphen in your last name. No.
I saw a talk from a woman whose last name was O'Neill. I think it was O'Neill. And she started out her talk with, "The internet hates the Irish."
The single apostrophe. Doom.
Yep.
You are doomed. Do you have to escape your own name?
So I have another pet peeve. A pet peeve I have, one of many, and you'll appreciate this because you have a cybersecurity firm or a security firm, is when password has a maximum length.
Yes.
And it's usually 9 or 10. What are you thinking? However, they make you jump through all these hoops of, characters, underscores, and all this stuff. But it can only be 10 characters.
Drives me up a wall because the best thing you can do is a long password.
That's right.
Like even if it's English words, it's a sentence. It's fine. That's still way better than a short, complicated one. I am irate. I have written angry emails about this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, that's an artifact of the past that now passwords should be phrases instead of short things that you can possibly remember by replacing A's with ats and shit like that. I hate it.
Password managers. I don't know any of my passwords.
Exactly.
No idea. I don't want to know. I never want to know again.
But you still run into that problem when you have to create a new password. You go to your password manager, you paste a new password in. Oh, that's too long.
Well, it would be nice if it told you. That's not the message it gives you.
Yeah,
What it says is minimum 8 characters. These are special characters you're allowed. It's like, I am compliant with all of these things.
Yeah.
Well, and sometimes it doesn't tell you. Have y'all run into this where you fill out your password and it just says password format is incorrect and it won't tell you why?
Some developer somewhere needs to be slapped.
Yes. You people suck. Honestly.
My wife, she's got it down now. She's like, some stupid developer. It's all the developer's fault.
All right. How do we? So if you want to do anything, make sure you write a real password requirements description, including maximum length, not just minimum length.
No maximum length. That's what I say.
If you're going to have a maximum length, I mean, it must be something. Like make the maximum length 65,536.
There you go.
Just because it'll give us a giggle, right? At least it'll give you, because if you're actually storing the password, you already committed a sin anyway. So don't do that. But meantime, okay. Where are we going to go? How are we going to wrap this up?
What's next for you? What are you doing after this? After this talk right here?
Like today or just in life?
Yeah, no. What's next on your to-do list?
Next on my to-do list. Oh, there's always so many things on my to-do list. I actually just came off an on-call rotation, so honestly, sleep is on my to-do list.
Nice.
It was an active one.
Oh, I see.
Kept me on my toes.
Working a couple of issues, were you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, have a good sleep. And, of course, if you have anything more to say on the topic, get in touch with us and we'll have you back on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was fun to chat.
Great to talk to you.
It was great fun. All right. Bye-bye. And we'll talk to you next time on .NET Rocks.
.NET Rocks is brought to you by Franklin's Net and produced by Plop Studios, a full-service audio, video, and post-production facility located physically in New London, Connecticut, and of course in the cloud. Online at pwop.com. Visit our website at dotnetrocks.com for RSS feeds, downloads, mobile apps, comments, and access to the full archives going back to show number 1, recorded in September 2002. And make sure you check out our sponsors. They keep us in business. Now go write some code. See you next time.
Got transmitter banned by the FCC.